As ashamed as I am to admit it, I'm just not much into horror games. I enjoy a good horror movie every now and then, but that's because I feel further removed from the experience. I'm not one of the characters in the movie, I'm just a guy watching. But in a horror video game, you are the main character, and you have to continuously and willingly put yourself into terrifying situations. I can certainly appreciate the merits of a good horror game. I got through a decent chunk of Resident Evil 7 before my PSN subscription kicked me out of it, and while I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, I did admire and appreciate it. But thankfully in Super Mario Galaxy, the designated spooky level doesn't contain more frights than any other level in the game. Really, the scariest thing about Mario Galaxy is realizing you have to run back to the Comet Luma again to play the mission you want. So, knowing that the Ghostly Galaxy won't make me want to hide behind my couch, let's take a closer look at its level design. The first mission in this galaxy is Luigi and the Haunted Mansion. This is an overt reference to the game Luigi's Mansion, but even if you weren't familiar with that title, this being the first galaxy he appears in should feel natural enough. Luigi is a scared, anxious guy, and if the first time we saw him he was drinking a pina colada in the Beach Ball Galaxy, that would feel a little out of place. Clearly, the Toads have been hard at work on building an interstellar fleet, because we start off by landing on a green star shroom. One cool thing I'd like to point out is that when we look from here, the mansion is actually upside down. I don't bring this up for any reason other than to note that it's just one of the many small examples of how the game uses its flexible gravity to manipulate the level design in interesting ways. The next area we land on, Mario gets to meet a new variety of Goomba, the Jack-O Goomba. Personally, I love when the theme of a level extends to its enemies. Yeah, these could have just been regular Goombas, and I don't think anybody would have been that bothered. But Jack-O-Lantern Goombas in a haunted themed level? If you can, why not? They remind me of those Goombas that wear Santa hats in the Snow Kingdom in Super Mario Odyssey. Much like how winter levels also carry a Christmas theme, spooky levels often carry a Halloween theme. Those that employ this tactic are always the better for it. It creates a greater sense of cohesion, a stronger theme that will linger for longer in the player's mind. One thing to note about the Santa hat wearing Goombas in Mario Odyssey is that this jolly wardrobe choice isn't just an aesthetic difference. No, because they're wearing hats, Mario can't capture them outright, instead needing to knock their hats off first. The Jack-O Goombas bring a similar alteration. If we try jumping on them like a regular Goomba, nothing will happen. Instead, we've got to give them a spin to knock their pumpkins off, and then we can be on our merry way to crush them under our feet or kick them into the void. This spider here might look similar to the ones called Spoings from back in the Space Junk Galaxy, but he's actually called a Sprangler. Coincidentally, that's the way people in the Deep South say sprinkler. Hey honey, can you turn on the Sprangler? The physics on these guys are nice, the way they swing back and forth. The walkway here has always reminded me of the twisted hallway in Ocarina of Time. When we wait on the side here to avoid this chain chomp, he'll give us a bark hello as he rolls by. Good boy. Once we're inside, we get to see the boos for the first time. They function in much the same way they do in all the other Mario games, going after us when we're not looking, but hiding where we are. But now with our spin move, we can spin them around, letting Mario fight back against the ghosts in a way he's never been able to before. Sometimes where they end up when we spin them can feel unpredictable, but thankfully the game doesn't require us to do anything too crazy with them in order to progress. In fact, right here, all we need to do is lure this boo right into the light. What an idiot! Before we move on to the next room, I just want to say that these walls remind me of that Louis Vuitton bag that every woman on the planet seems to own. Seriously, I'm pretty sure if you went to the Arctic Circle, you could find chicks with this bag. Anyway, this next room is one I'm a big fan of. There's very few interior sections in Super Mario Galaxy, aside from the secret rooms, so this one, being here in a house, makes a ton of sense, and still manages to use the gravity mechanic in an interesting way. It's not all too different from the secret room through the pipe all the way back in the Good Egg Galaxy, but if we happen to miss that, this would be the first time we're seeing anything like this. Plus, one neat secret is if we ground pound on the ceiling here, we end up in this library room where we can collect a bunch of coins. Once we make our way outside, if we take a quick detour to the left, we can say hi to everyone's favorite Mario brother, Luigi. I want to point out the importance of this moment right here, because right here in the Ghostly Galaxy is the first time Luigi has ever appeared in a 3D Mario game. Okay, there was that one time in Super Mario 64 DS, but that's a remake, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who remembers it exists anyway. But really, no Luigi in Super Mario 64, no Luigi in Super Mario Sunshine, but finally Luigi in Super Mario Galaxy. This giant omission has always struck me as so odd. Luigi was present in all the party and sports games and the Paper Mario games, and he was even in the very first Smash Bros. but never a 3D Mario game up until this point. Why? Where was he during Super Mario 64? Just chilling at home? What about Sunshine? Was he not invited on Mario and Peach's vacation? They invited all these stupid toads, but not him? So finally he's here. But in Mario Galaxy, Luigi isn't just some NPC that we can ignore most of the time. He's actually playable. The requirements to get him are absurd. You have to get every star in the game, and then he's playable in this pseudo New Game Plus situation. That means if you want to unlock the Luigi, you've got to really work for him. I remember back in the early days of owning this game, I had one friend who came over a lot. He'd always call me to make sure I was around. This happened all on landline phones, by the way. And the first thing he would always ask me was, "Did you unlock Luigi?" This was always tongue-in-cheek because neither he nor I ever thought I'd do it. It's 120 stars to get there, and some of those are tough, especially for a kid. But still, every single time he called, that would be the first thing he'd ask me. But looking back on it, what my friend was doing was something more than just joking around with me about a nearly impossible gaming achievement. He was motivating me to go the distance and get every star in the game because I did unlock Luigi. I don't remember how long it took, but I did it. I didn't play much of the game as Luigi because it's all the same stars you do as Mario, but still, unlocking Luigi as a 12-year-old kid gives me the same amount of pride that beating Dark Souls as an adult got me. And to my friend, if he happens to be watching this, hey, Ray, what's up? Hit me up sometime. There might be a good chance you watch this because you were the only other kid into Nintendo as I was, and that kind of passion doesn't just fade away. So, add me on Switch. Let's play some Smash Brothers for old time's sake. I tried to find you a few years ago, but you have like zero social media, like seriously zero. And you never had a cell phone when I knew you, so I was basically at a dead end. I was actually in the area not too long ago for a wedding, so I guess I could have driven to your parents' house and knocked on the door, but that would have been weird. Actually, funny story, I think I came across this old friend of mine years later in a random match of Super Smash Brothers for the 3DS. This was when I was in college in late 2015. I remember playing one night and I got matched up with someone named Ray who played a blue Kirby. And my friend was named Ray and he always played blue Kirby. So I thought, this has to be him. What are the odds that it's another guy named Ray who plays blue Kirby? Kirby sucked in Super Smash Brothers for the 3DS. So no one was going out of their way to play him unless they really liked Kirby. So anyway, hey Ray, shoot me a message on Twitter. But getting back to the Ghostly Galaxy, there's a nice little reflex-based puzzle to get the key here, and then we're on our way back inside. Here we'll notice a sign that we're not able to read because it's written in Booish. Who knew Boos had their own language? Good for them. Thankfully, we won't have to feel illiterate for too long because here's where we have the introduction of the Boo Mushroom, which does exactly what you'd expect. The Boo Mushroom is different from a lot of other power-ups in the game because it's not just a suit Mario wears. It's a full transformation, more akin to something from Super Mario Odyssey. In fact, it's a ton like Odyssey. It's got its own unique movement and abilities, and it makes other Boos fall in love with us, much like what happens with the Goombas. This transformation right here could have been the inspiration for Odyssey's entire hook. But even though this power-up might be the most unique in Super Mario Galaxy, it's one of my least favorites. Its appearances in the game are very sparse, and we only use it for a short amount of time. I have no doubt it could have been used to better effect, but clearly the developers didn't see it as a priority in the way the Bee Mushroom was. Spinning will turn us invisible and allow us to pass through some barriers, like we can here. I like how Luigi sees us as a real ghost, similarly to how the Toads in the Honey Hive Galaxy thought Bee Mario was an actual bee. At least with a ghost, it's a little more understandable. Thankfully though, Luigi's fear doesn't last long because all Mario needs to do is float back towards the light, and he'll be back to his old self. After a quick family reunion, it's time to grab the star. I really like how in any mission where we get the star from Luigi, he jumps into the victory shot with Mario. It makes me really want a mainline 3D Mario game that's focused on the two Mario brothers, not just Mario on his own. Anyway, the next mission is one of the more challenging stars in Super Mario Galaxy, at least within the main levels. The name is a very spooky sprint, and sprint isn't just a title here, it's a command. When we land on the Star Shroom this time, we can see Captain Toad without any of his gear, so he looks like just a regular old Toad. Even he knows to stay inside the ship this time, because what's about to go down won't be pretty. After a quick rendezvous with the Jacko Goombas, we're treated to warm up with some of the Pole Stars. If you hadn't been comfortable with them so far, this is where I'd advise you to get comfortable, because in order to get the star in this mission, we're going to have to master these puppies. Once we take a brisk ride on the launch star, we're taken to a spherical planet, at the top of which is a safety-conscious Boo known as the Spooky Speedster. He's got one thing on his mind: racing us for the star. And it's not a race of running or swimming. This time we'll be exclusively using the pole stars to get ourselves to the finish line. This is the mission I had the most trouble with as a kid, and it still gives me a hard time now. Even though the pull stars work as they should, they can feel unreliable. That's because we're using the pointer on the controller to aim at them, but with the camera constantly moving as we go through the course, we're constantly readjusting to compensate for this. This can create a scenario, or in my case, many scenarios, where we have the pointer locked on a pull star, but then the camera moves forward and we have to move the pointer backwards to try to keep a hold of it. Then by the time we get back to the original star we wanted, Mario's moving in a different direction, so now we've got to pick a different one to get him back on track. It's nothing you can't get used to with a little practice, but no matter what, it's removing controllability from the player, which makes it easier to enter into the territory of feeling unfair. Scattering these meat bones across the course also doesn't help. It's hard enough to get a grip on Mario and where he's going, and just grazing them will send him flying in another direction, which means we'll need to reevaluate our entire approach. Overall, while I appreciate that this section adds a much needed dose of difficulty to the game, there's good hard and then there's bad hard. Challenging the player in ways that make them consider new strategies is good hard. Making them feel like they're not in full control of the character and the odds are stacked against them is bad hard. So unfortunately, this mission falls too far into the bad hard territory of the difficulty curve. Plus, it feels like a little bit of extra salt is rubbed in the wound when we're flailing around trying to get control of Mario with these goddamn pull stars, and then this cheeky white bastard floats past us without even needing to consider them. I think the designers knew the difficulty was a little much here because they placed this sling star which lets us skip over a huge chunk of the course. Overall, I think its inclusion is a good thing, but I'd rather they have just designed the course to not need it in the first place. Because either route we take, we don't feel like we're getting the full experience. If we choose to take it, it's a major part of the level we're skipping, and the victory doesn't feel quite as earned. If we don't take it, we might find ourselves struggling to keep up, and feeling like we intentionally screwed ourselves over. I beat the course using both methods for this video, and neither felt great, but I do think ignoring the sling star gives a better feeling of satisfaction when we beat the speedster. But maybe instead of just having one course that can be skipped over, they could divide it into two paths. One could be easier but without any rewards in the way, and the other could be more challenging, but showers us with star bits and 1-ups. That's the way I would have done it. Although, one thing I will say in defense of this mission is that it can provide a great feeling of tension that very few other levels in Super Mario Galaxy bring. The difficulty of the game on the whole is very low, so to have a spike or two like this can bring some flavor, and have the players keeping closer attention as they play. But as happy as I'm about that, I'm more happy to just be done with the thing. And we can finally move on to the last mission of the galaxy, Beware of Bouldergeist. Once again, we land on the Starshroom to see Captain Toad hiding inside, who tells us that the boss of this galaxy has kidnapped Luigi. Sounds like Luigi's problem to me, but let's move forward. Up ahead, we're greeted by not one, but now 3 Spranglers, which gives us an even better look at their physics. When we make our way inside, we're greeted by a new member of the Boo family, the Bomboo. They're a bit more creepy looking than the ones we're normally used to, but very fun to swing around. They can feel chaotic in an enjoyable way, and they just make me want to destroy everything possible. Mario swings them by holding onto the ends of their tongues, which, when you think about it, is kinda weird, but hey, it gets the job done. Next, we decide to disregard anything we learned in school about fire safety and climb right through the fireplace. After the launch star, we'll end up in this pseudo 2D section. Here, the level continues with the spooky theme by peppering us with more Spranglers and Jacko-Goombas, plus brings back the sticky bushes from the Space Junk Galaxy. Hey there, old friend. They make sense in a section like this because they're two-dimensional by nature, lacking any up and down movement. They give us a warm-up on the first side of this planet, but once we move on to the next half, it's time to use our skills to collect some blue star chips. It's a fun little mini puzzle, and once we get them all, we can pull ourselves over to the launch star. The perspective on this with the cage-like planet is kinda weird, and it can be hard to see if the gap in front of Mario is open or not. I'm not sure if they intended for this to be another mini puzzle of its own, or if it just ended up like this. The next planet we land on also uses this cage structure, but with a purple bouncy ball at its core. This inner planet's colors are such a heavy contrast from the rest of the galaxy, I have to wonder if it was intended for another level at some point, but then ended up here. It's such a one and done thing without much connection to anything before or after it, and it really could have been in any galaxy. Next, we make our way over to the boss area. If video games have taught me one thing, it's that when you find yourself in a large, flat, circular room, you know something bad's about to go down. Once we enter, the music takes a dramatic turn and we finally meet Bouldergeist. This is one of the more atmospherically intense bosses of the game. Most of the other bosses are cute or silly looking, including Bowser, but not this guy. Similar to Tarantox, who's the final boss of the Space Junk Galaxy, he looks like he'd fit better into a Zelda game than a Mario game. Bouldergeist is another one of those fights that uses the mechanic that was introduced to us at the start of the level to defeat him, this one being the bomb boos. Swinging them into him is super satisfying. Once we hit him with a couple, we expose this heart or tongue thing? Either way, he looks so vulnerable in this state that I almost feel sorry for him. Not sorry enough to keep wailing on him, of course, and in the second phase he spawned these two giant hands to block our attacks. The good news for us is that more obstacles means more things to smash, so now we can really have at it. One weird thing about the ending is that when we defeat him, Luigi is nowhere to be found, despite Captain Toad telling us in the beginning that this boss kidnapped him. I guess he escaped on his own at some point? Matter of fact, how is Luigi traveling to all these different galaxies getting stars anyway? Has Rosalina given him the same free reign of the observatory as Mario? But inconsistencies in a children's game aside, that wraps it up for the Ghostly Galaxy. While a lot of video games will have a designated haunted level, it's cool to see this done in the wider interstellar theme of Super Mario Galaxy. My biggest nitpick with it would probably be that not much occurs inside the mansion as I'd like. It takes up such a prominent position when we're selecting the galaxy that I have thought more would take place within it, similar to the central planet of the Beach Bowl Galaxy. But it still manages to do its theme justice, and feels very distinct from all the other worlds of the game. The next video in this series will cover one of the most iconic levels in Super Mario Galaxy, the Gusty Garden Galaxy, where we'll be reliving Super Mario 64 DS, biting into apples, and questioning everything. I hope you'll join me there.